ब्रह्मरूपमादिमध्यशेष सर्वभासकम् भावषट्कहीनरूपनित्यसत्यमद्वयम् वाङ्मनोति गोचरं च नेति नेति भाविकम् तं नमामि देवदेव रामकृष्णमीश्वरम्. We have been discussing certain salient features from Yoga Vasishta, which will be useful to us in our lives. You see, as we had started, when we started, we found that we look at the same world, we see the same world, but we interpret it, we perceive it in our own way. And each one of us is unique in our interpretation of the world, in our understanding. Having understood this, having kept this in mind, we'll proceed further. The moment we say that we are understanding or perceiving, that is, we are experiencing the world in our own way, it shows that each one of us has different interpretation, different experience. Immediately a question comes in our mind. What is it that is giving this difference between two people? I'll explain with an example. A person reacts with probably anger, probably sadness to a particular situation. Let us say that one of the relatives or one of the close friends of a person has passed away in this COVID due to infection of COVID. A person is extremely sad, and we all will be as human beings. But the reaction as such will be different for different persons. One person reacts to it through depression, sadness, and for long hours or long time in thinking about the same thing. There is another person who does not react. He shows his sympathy. He is sad, but at the same time, he has a different way of reacting or different way of responding, I would say. And that response is totally different because he has accepted that person's death and he remembers only the good things or only those parts and he passes on. This difference has to make us ask one question. What is it that is creating this world with a difference in perception? A response comes from our sages who say that this particular creation is the creation of your own self. But most of us, or almost all of us, refuse to take this as a fact. And because our behavior, our interpretation is different, how it is different, we'll take those interpretations in the sense so that we'll be able to go back, trace back to what the Vasishta Muni is telling Rama. One person, two friends were walking and they entered a village where there was a market going on. A lot of people were there, a lot of shops were there, and everybody was shouting to sell their ware, to sell their product. And so there was a lot of noise, and both these friends were walking on the main street. Suddenly, one of the friends, he stopped and turned in a direction, and then he did namaste to in that direction. The friend who was walking with him, he asked him, he was looking around and he didn't see anything. And he said, to whom are you doing namaste? Whom are you wishing? The friend asked him, didn't you hear the temple bells in that direction, from that direction? The friend laughed and he says, you are able to hear that temple bell in this all this chaos and this pandemonium, that is sound, so much of noise. He didn't, the friend who had heard the temple bell, he just smiled. He took out one single rupee coin and he just dropped it on the ground. Immediately, there were about 50 to 60 people running around searching for that coin. The friend too wanted to join. This person dragged him by hand and took him out of the village. And he says, did you get my point? Did I answer your question? He said, no. He said that in so much of noise, a sound created by a small coin made us aware of, made so many people aware as to search that coin. I heard the temple bell. It shows that each one of us has a different language. So whenever we are listening to somebody, and especially in a satsang or reading a book, we have to be, or we understand it in our own way, and it's good. That is, we start from this particular level which we are in presently, and then start proceeding. What is the present level now? Most of us are in. We get, as I said, the only source of our understanding, our learning is our senses, 5 senses. They are called as the Jnanendriyas by Vedanta. The eyes, which see an object, ears hear the sound. So each sense has an object of its own. And through those objects, we understand the world in our own way. This, having understood this, we understand this world and then live in this world. How do we live? We give too much of importance to the external, because we say, and it's our experience too, that when we interact, when our senses enjoy those objects of senses, we get happy. When I'm hungry, I ask for food, and when I eat, then my hunger is satiated. When I see a wonderful object, a scene, a nature, when I'm exposed to nature, I see that nature and I'm fulfilled. So we are so convinced that there is only one world and the world is outside. That is the reason why, because we depend on these senses, which are called as windows, because we see the world through these windows. We see the world and we conclude, this is where our problem comes. We conclude that this alone is the whole of the world. Actually, each one of us is experiencing through our windows. We are seeing the world outside through a window, which is limited by its very nature. Because it is said that, the scientists agree here, that the visible light is very, very small in this electromagnetic spectrum. We are able to see only a particular band of, which is, the sight is sensitive to that. Similarly, audible frequency. Similarly, all our senses are limited. Our windows are limited. When we get convinced and when we conclude that there is only one world, which is not, which we saw just a few minutes before, that it is each one of us has a different world. We are convinced that this is the only world. Then our trouble starts. Our dependency on the external objects increases. And consequently, once we get dependent on those objects, When the objects are not there, we are sad. When certain objects come in front of our, in contact with our senses, what happens? They don't, that they make us uncomfortable, or they don't give us joy. Instead, they give us some misery. Then we try to avoid those objects, and we try to seek only those objects from which we get happiness. And this is the basic tenet which is given by Vedanta. Says, don't be too dependent on the senses. Then they say that, how is it that you are able to activate these senses? How are you able to see through these senses? Unless you have your manas, your mind behind that eye, that sense, you will not be able to see. For instance, we are reading an interesting book, or we are seeing a television program in which we are involved. Somebody comes and calls us, somebody tells us something. Maybe after hearing, I'll come to that, maybe after hearing, we'll nod our head, but actually we have not recorded, we have not understood, we have not listened to that particular message which was given by that person, and we continue. After some time, when the program is over, that person who had called me or had given me some instructions, he or she comes and tells me that I told you that. He says, did you? What had happened? My mind was elsewhere other than this sense of hearing. And because of that, I heard, but I did not listen. Similarly, my eyes, on my retina, the image of the object came, but I really did not see, because even by keeping my eyes open, in spite of the fact that the eyes are seeing an object, I need not really see it, perceive it. So they said, what is necessary? Behind these senses, mind is necessary. But even mind is limited. For that, mind, what does mind do? These people said, and then that's our this thing also. When we see a black bird, we recognize it. And this process is so fast, we recognize it and we call it crow. But how did that happen? My eyes saw that bird, my mind received it, and it passed it on to intellect, or that which recognizes, that which analyzes and says and comes to a decision. This is a crow. So there are so many faculties of the mind. That is, they call it as antakarana. There are different faculties. One, to receive the sense data, that is the images which are coming, the sense objects which are being received by the senses, to collect them, to recognize them and analyze them and come to a decision. And then they are passed on to the memory, which is called as chitta. Buddhi is the analytic faculty, and chitta, or the memory. So all these faculties are controlled by I. I see, I hear, I understand, I feel, I act. Behind all these actions, behind all these activities that are going on, I is very much there. And that's why Vasishtha Muni says, the origin of creation is I. And this I has got certain characteristics. What is the nature of this I? This has been analyzed and described in detail in the first part of our Yoga Vasishtha. But how will it help us? When this analysis says that if there is an independent person who is controlling these activities, which are lower, which are, I would say, more gross, which are material, that controls, or that helps us to function, then that must be understood. I'll give you one more example. We look at the cosmos. In fact, all our scientists have been looking into the cosmos through huge telescopes, radio telescopes, and they are understanding the nature of this cosmos, this universe, this world. Suppose this the data has been given by the telescope. That is, he has extended his eyes. The scientist has extended his eyes so that he's able to see outside. He's able to see into distances. If that scientist is not there, what will be the importance of the telescope and all that data? Unless and until I is there, there will be no world. For me, when I say I, for me, the world doesn't exist unless until I am there. So the principal entity, principal thing which is necessary is I. And he said, Vasishtha Muni says, that try to trace this I. Why should we trace this I? A question should come. It's because we'll be able to become free of these instruments called as the buddhi, intellect, the memory, the manas, and the senses. When I say free, because we are now entangled with them, we are controlled by them. We are so much overpowered by our senses and our mind, which dictates them. Go here, buy now. So what is our problem? The consumerism. What is consumerism? It gives some advertisements, and immediately our mind starts asking for that object. Whether it's necessary or not, that's different. We try to gain those objects, buy those objects, which are not necessary for us. And in the process, the whole world is miserable. It's not enough. No matter how much I have, the desire continues on and on and on. And because of this desire, all the problems. Remember, Rama said that unless and until these desires are controlled, I'll not be able to do anything. So how does the mind function? Or how does this I, after getting influenced by a lower instrument, happens? One beautiful story is told by Muni Vasishtha. He says, there used to be one queen whose name was Leela. And she was a pious lady, but she was extremely fond of her husband. And as and when they grew old, she wanted to be with her husband, or she wanted her husband to be with her all the time. So it is said that she propitiates goddess Saraswati and gets a boon, that she wants to live with him all the time. Saraswati said, that's not possible. Your husband has got a particular age and then he has to leave the body. At least Saraswati, Leela asks Saraswati, you let the body be with me so that I'll be with him all the time. It's a very strange story. And this lady is with, the husband passes away, and then she keeps the body. And then Saraswati has told her that you keep changing the flowers on the body and the body will remain fresh, but it will be lifeless. But how long can you live with a dead body for a long time? So she calls Saraswati again, and Saraswati starts telling her about her earlier births, and she remembers them. How far it is true, how far it's not, well, let's not go into that question. But this gives the methodology of mind in activity. You see, for a moment, we'll keep Leela's story for a while. Let's take our day-to-day example. We sleep, And we dream. When we dream, it will be, as last time we had seen, it will be more real to us, because when we are dreaming, the dream is extremely real. But when we get up, what happens? Oh, it's only a dream. Funny dream, we say. And children, many times they get up and they start asking for, they start demanding and crying for the toy which they had seen in their dream. But this is the process. That is, the dream as such continues. And it is said that many a time, or most of the time, when we just go into sleep, immediately we start dreaming. The psychologists who have done a lot of research on sleep, they say that this dreaming as such is going on even when we are awake. Just for a moment, let us observe our own minds. What is happening? We are listening to something, we are trying to understand. At the same time, there are parallel thoughts which are going on in the mind. So, this activity called mind, what is activity? It's flow of thoughts. This continues, sometimes fast when we are excited, and this vegam, this speed as such, it increases if you are excited and disturbed. Many a time we may have noticed our own behavior. If you are angry, the thoughts are extremely fast and we are unable to speak because the speed is so much. And we are unable to speak because that thing is so fast, mind is so fast, going on repeating. Why is it that person, he insulted me? Whether he really insulted or that's a different matter, but we go on repeating that same thought over and over again, and then it excites us. Something like that happens most of the time. That is, mind is active with the flow of thoughts. Rama asks him a question, Vasishta. Why is it that we are unable to see or unable to experience this I? He says, I is a very, very subtle, very sukshma activity. And in front of the gross activity, we are unable to hear it, we are unable to see it. We are in a meeting. If the noise is too much, we are unable to listen to a person. Suppose somebody whispers something in our ear, we are unable to hear. The gross or the material has a stronger effect on us. And that's why we are unable to see the subtle, unable to feel the subtle, unable to feel the I. So Vasishta tells us through Rama. He says that try to control your mind. He has a wonderful way of telling. Most of the time, this is again our experience. Let us say that we are near the riverbed. And if we walk near the riverbed, or probably even in the water itself, shallow waters, we start walking, we'll not be able to see the bottom of the lake or bottom of the river, because the dust and the clay as such, it disturbs and we are unable to see the bottom. There's a very beautiful episode from the life of Buddha. Once Ananda, that is shadow of Buddha, he asked Buddha, he said, Tathagat, why is it that I'm unable to control the mind? And it is said Buddha didn't reply immediately. That was his, that's how he used to teach his disciples. Next day they had to go to the next village. And they started walking. And they came across a caravan, a group of bullock carts from the opposite direction. They were coming. And these people were crossing a stream. The caravan passed in it was coming in the opposite direction, and it went back. It went behind them, and these people started walking further. After about, say, 5 or 10 minutes, Buddha told Ananda, Ananda, bring some water. I'm thirsty. Ananda remembered that they had just passed by the river. So he went there and he gathered he wanted to take the water in his pot. And he found that it's full of mud. Immediately it crossed his mind that this water is not potable. You cannot drink this water. He rushed back to Buddha and said that Tathagat, we'll go little further. We'll find better water, clearer water, so that you can drink it. Buddha told him, no. Now you go back and get that water from the same river. When Ananda went back, the water was very, very clear. He took that water and brought it to Buddha. Buddha, before drinking, he asked Ananda, did you understand? Ananda, in fact, we should be very grateful to Ananda. Ananda asked, he's asking our doubts. He said, no, I didn't understand. He said that when you had gone there for the first time to bring water, the bullock carts had disturbed the water, and there was turbulence and the water was muddy. And when you came back and told me, and when I sent you back, by that time, this dust had settled down on the floor of the bed of the river, and that's why you were able to clear the water. He says, if you are too eager to stop your mind, to control your mind, you will be creating more agitations. So they say, he said, allow the mind to come down, calm down and calm down. And you allow the meditation to happen. This very message has been told by Muni Vasishta to Rama. Manah prashamanopaye moksha avashishyate. He says, prashamanopaya. You don't force the mind. Just allow the mind to relax. It's an upaya. It's a yatna. It's a trick. It's a technique. Don't force it. The moment you force, the mind will rebel. And you start calming down the mind. You start allowing the mind to happen. But to allow the mind to settle down, we'll have to have those 4 friends which we talked about in the second or third discussion which we made. First is Shama, patience, Vichara, analysis, Santosha, contentment. And the 4th is a consequence of these 3 steps which we can take. And that is Sadhu Sangha. We'll get sadhus. We'll get the company of sadhus who will guide us. Patience. Again, Muni Vasishta is telling, again, he is coming back. I was telling you that we'll be repeating about these 3 friends, and the 4th phalam or 4th grace that comes to us in the form of Guru or the Satsanga, Sadhu Sangha. Analyze. First thing is be patient. Second thing is analyze. Whenever something happens to you, start asking this question, how did this happen? Initially you ask why. Fine. Why did this happen? Why did he tell me, talk about me to somebody else? Why? That comes. But how did I react? How did I respond when somebody said something against me? When somebody apparently, not really, apparently tried to insult me, which I took it as an insult. It's because I did not ask this how. How did it happen? How do I react? Why do I react like that? How do I react? Once that happens, then slowly and steadily vichara comes in. You think, you ask, and when you start asking such questions to ourselves, last time we saw the story in which we said, ask the question closer to home, that which pertains to us. Basically, what we are trying to learn here, what we are trying to understand here is, we are trying to understand ourselves, to know ourselves. And once we know ourselves, it is easy to understand others, easy to accept others. This is very, very important. Accepting others requires accepting ourselves. Just when you see somebody, there's in which this time the third story comes in. A Rakshasi by name Karkati. She used to eat people, and after some time, she felt herself very, she felt very bad about this her act, and then she wanted to change her life. So it is said that she propitiated Brahma, and Vasishta is telling this story. Brahma, and then she got a boon. She said that I'm sick of killing people and eating, but at the same time I have hunger. So give me something, or give me a boon so that I'll be able to eat at the same time, live happily. Brahma said that you become Visuchika. She had asked for Suchika, that is needle. Brahma said you will become Visuchika, and that's what they say, that this cholera, the microbe which causes cholera is called as Visuchika. So she became that and started eating. After some time again, she started feeling bad about herself. She started repenting. Why is this happening? She again propitiated Brahma, and then she got enlightened. Now, the purport of this story, the essence of this story is this. No matter in what situation we are in, we may be very angry people, or no matter how criminal a person is, don't judge such persons. The moment you start judging people, that means there is some problem. Sri Ramakrishna used to give, whenever he used to give a hint, he used to give a suggestion to his disciples. He would say that whenever you see some limitation in somebody, he would say, beware. Because how did you recognize that limitation? Unless and until that limitation is part of your own being, unless until you have that limitations. So if you see something bad in the others, something ignoble about others, be very careful about yourself. That's how Sri Ramakrishna helped us to connect ourselves with others. Looking at other people, we can learn. So vichara, and once we start observing people, we don't judge people. Once we stop judging people, then everything settles down. The mind starts settling down. These things, this is the four steps which we talked about, the three steps, Shama, Vichara, and Santosha, are what he calls it as Shubhavasanas. That is, we are creating good habits. We are creating such habits which will help us to become free from our limitations. Swami Vivekananda in one place says that don't even judge persons who have been convicted for murder, rape, and all that, because of them you are trying to feel that you are good, that I don't have this negative quality. He says, do beware. He says, all these people are also in the queue. They are also on the journey. Only thing is, their direction is different. Swami Vivekananda is very clear. And actually, Swami Vivekananda always used to say that I speak only my master's words. All of them are traveling. All of us are traveling. So somebody starts earlier and somebody starts late. So be quite understanding about other persons And once you start doing that, you will stop judging people. The turmoil in the mind will decrease. I don't say it stops full altogether. This is one of the steps. Then the thing is, how is it that this mind, why is it that this mind is so active all the time? To explain this person, Vasishta tells one more story called as the Aindavas, the sons of Indu. It is said that Brahma, after his nightful rest, when he got up, when his eyes fell in particular direction, he saw 10 suns in different planes. So he approached one of the sons. Sons means the Surya, and then asked him, "Who are you?" The sun just smiled at him and then said that, "I'm your creation." He said, "How? I did not know." So then that Aindava, he says, "I'm son of Indu, whom you had created. And in turn, I'm your creation only." He tells the story that he was the son of Indu, and they didn't have children, and they had 10 sons. And all of us became a son who can create, who looks after a particular plane of consciousness. What is the purport of this story? It is this. That is, the mind as such, when it starts working, we do not know. But having started it, we have to control it if we are interested in understanding ourselves. That I, who am I? That question which is oft asked by so many of our sages, especially the saint from Arunachala, uh, Maharshi Ramana of Tiruvannamalai. Whatever be the problem, he would say, trace who is feeling this, who is feeling bad, who is having these problems. Try to seek that out. So if we are interested in that, then we have to have certain control over the mind. And what kind of control? With patience, with vichara, and with santosha, that is contentment. Desires are the ones which all the time keep us busy most of the time. And if we are able to control those desires, and how do you control those desires? Through understanding, viveka again. That is, these things are, whatever I perceive, are limited. That is, they are there only for time being, and they pass off. There's a very beautiful shloka from the Gita, which says that all the perception happens when the senses come in touch with their objects, and what happens, either you become happy or miserable. You may experience heat or cold, or you may feel elated or down. All these reactions, all these experiences are not lasting. These experiences are temporary. They come and go. They are anitya. And once you understand it through Viveka, once you feel through your own experience, then you'll start giving less importance to these desires. You're less disturbed by these desires, and then you'll be able to control the mind. You'll be able to calm the mind. Then and then alone, we'll be able to go back, look back, and within ourselves. There is one more problem which we have, and probably this is very, very intense and very difficult. We are unable to stay alone. None of us likes to be alone. If we are alone, then we feel restless. Either we go to read a magazine, or we turn on our mobile, turn on the TV, or call our friends. Why? Because I'm feeling lonely. I don't want to be alone. This is a very intense problem which all of us have, human beings have. We cannot be alone. Why can't we be alone? It's because if we are alone, then our desires and our emotions and things like that, they keep on coming and troubling us. As one of the persons, sorry, one of the persons who tells us about the mind calming techniques, he says they stand out like cobras, these desires, and then scare us. In northern side, they say that if अगर मैं अकेला बैठ जाता हूँ, if I stay alone in the house or in the room, मुझे दीवारें काटने के लिए दौड़ते हैं. That is, these walls chase me. They come and attack me as if they want to eat me. Now, how can the lifeless walls attack you? It's not the walls, but that loneliness which we feel. We don't want to be alone. But unless and until we accept this loneliness or accept this aloneness, we will not be able to be happy with others also. What is the paradox? We feel alone, so we seek company. And when we seek company and when we are there for a long time, then we again become uncomfortable. Because the company which we sought is not as we want that company to be, as we want them to praise us or give us happiness. It's not necessary, because they are all beings with full of life, they with their own emotions. They need not always be our puppets, and nobody can be a puppet. So you'll feel bored there, and you are scared to be alone. So we keep on going from here outside. We go outside, and then we try to come inside. So Vasishta says this limitation, this has to be accepted, and because of this, that is, you don't want to be alone. This is the primal cause, he says. Because of that, we create the world. I don't want to be alone. So I create my mind stuff, antakarana, which has got different faculties. I create the senses, and the senses again, in turn, they create the world as such. So this limitation, this problem which we have of not being able to stay alone, has to be tackled. So even Brahma is unable to sit quiet, so he creates. That is the purport of that particular story. So Brahma here is not that Brahma with Chaturmukha Brahma, but it is the Brahma I which creates. The other day when we discussed about the sleep as such, when we go and sleep in a strange place, I said that the first vibration that comes when we wake up in that new place is I. And after some time only, when we don't even remember where we are, which place we are in, and sometimes we don't even remember our own name, then we panic, and then immediately, yes, I'm actually, we have spoiled. This is the process of creation. Our world gets created every morning when we wake up. We are talking about our own words now in this discussion. This is one limit, and that story tells us that even Brahma doesn't know how the creation came forth. And he starts asking how it happened. This limitation is accepted when we start practicing being alone. How do you practice? Just be alone. You initially you feel maybe very uncomfortable, but gradually you start observing yourself and find that you'll come to one wonderful conclusion, which is very important. If I'm unable to accept my own company, how can I expect others to accept my company? So the process starts inward. That is, let me befriend myself. I'm not my own friend. Then how do I expect friends to come and surround me? When this understanding comes, then we have again put one more step ahead, and self-understanding. These few hints which are given by Vasishta in the first part of the Yoga Vasishta are very practical. And most of the time, what happens is we read these stories and we are satisfied with those stories. But what they indicate, what they hint, which hint they give, they are uh, we are unable to see them. So let us, when we read this, I urge you to, if possible, read this wonderful scripture and keep a copy of it with you. Keep on reading it. As and when you go on reading it, then you'll be able to dive deep into yourselves. It's not necessary that you should read only Vasishta. Any book, you read Upanishads, you read Gita, you read even books which are some wonderful books written by some foreign authors also. One Richard Bach, who wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull, who wrote Illusions. They are small books. Read that book repeatedly, then you'll find that you are able to dive in better. You are able to understand what the author is trying to tell you. These are actually which give us satsang. Satsang is the association of good things, shubha vasanas. So Vasishta is only a medium, I would say, to try to help us going within, and let us help each other, and let us help ourselves. Let us accept ourselves and start this journey. And those of us who have started this journey, let us enjoy this journey, because the joy of reaching there will be there, no doubt. But when you start the process of traveling and start enjoying that travel, then the whole journey becomes enjoyable. The whole journey becomes enlightened, because every time, every pace, every step you put, there'll be a light of ray which comes. I'd like to conclude with a small episode, a small story. One person went in search. He was a seeker, and he went into a forest. He had heard of a sage who was living in a small hut, but he was an enlightened master. So he wanted to go and have his darshan and his satsang. He reached the place. To his surprise, he found that the hut as such had only a small window. It's not, couldn't be also called as a window. It was only a small hole which was pointing towards the sky, or the sky could be seen from that hole. It was otherwise the whole, it was jungle, and it was a Parnishala, and then there was only a small hole. He went there. First of all, he was uncomfortable in that hut. So he asked the master, he said that how can you live in such a small area without any window, without any ventilation? The master answered that I have this small hole through which I get my sky, my part of the sky, he said. It's only a suggestive story. Every step you take, you claim that small part of that sky of yours, because you are no less than a sky. Unfortunately, we have limited ourselves to these bodies, and then we have limited ourselves to this mind, to these desires, to these senses, and the interpretation of this world. So let us break these chains of bondage, and then let's start slowly and steadily move towards our own self, which happens to be the destination. Thank you so much. I think there's still about 10 minutes. If there are any questions, you
Yeah.
may please ask.
Yeah, it's an ask your question. And especially today, we discussed much about how we can travel inwardly. And when you travel inwardly, what all the difference you can see. Especially today, we were as a part of the previous discussion itself. What are the Shubha Vasanas, and ultimately, what is the result we are going to get out of it? Actually, we are getting, because of the Shubha Vasana only, we are getting this kind of a result now itself, because Raviji is there in front of us, because Guru Sangam is happening now itself. So we can ask any questions regarding today's discussions. What all the things in your mind? It's happy to start the discussion. If anybody has any questions, they can ask.
Swamiji, may I ask one thing? I'm
Yes.
Suresh. Like, how can we know that whether our mind is settled down, or how far it is settled down, or whether it has settled down, or how can we know our status?
This is a question which answers your questions, actually. The question itself answers. You'll know when the mind has settled down. You don't have to know the conditions of the mind. Immediately, you'll start feeling some kind of joy, some happiness. We are actually feeling uncomfortable because the activity of the mind is moved. As and when the mind settles down, calms down, you yourself will know. Sri Ramakrishna used to, he used to give a wonderful example. He said that it seems he was actually basically a very humorous person. There was a lot of humor in him. He said that it seems one child asked, "Mother, when will I know that I have got the call of nature?" The mother smilingly said, "Child, you'll know when the call comes." So when the mind calms down, you'll know. Actually, there are nothing like conditions there. Balki, we have put so many conditions. Actually, we are under the load of so many conditions. The mind is so heavy. It becomes light. Actually, too much of thinking, obviously presupposes that the desires are there. Too many desires, they keep weighing on our mind. Just as I said, that one of the experiments which we can do ourselves is we sit for 5 minutes. Don't even close your eyes. Try to be with your mind. What are the thoughts that are going on in the mind? You'll be surprised to know that most of the time the mind is seeking something outside. Why? Because mind can be active. It remains alive when it has got objects outside, because mind is dependent on outside. And when the mind calms down, actually, in a way, the mind is dying. Because mind calming down the mind, there's no activity of the mind, means mind is the flow of thoughts is not there. So when that becomes calm, you'll feel as if you have rested. Many of the people, most of the people who have experienced meditation, I say that meditation is a result. We do something to bring the mind to meditation, but the mind has to go into the state of meditation. We cannot do it. Once you do it, means there is effort. It's an effortless state. So once that effort goes off, the mind tells you, look, there is something. It will not say anything, but it becomes your friend. And when that becomes your friend, when the calm mind, you will be able to turn your vision inside. That's one of the signs. That is, you are able to see. The fact that you are able to see the activity of the mind shows that there is somebody else who is observing the mind. I told you that I wish that probably you may have experimented. You try to sit for some time. Maybe you observe your breath. You observe 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and then immediately the mind goes off. That's that is its habit, because it wants to be alive. It's like, suppose you ask a small child, which is very, very mischievous, ask him, in fact, the most torturous shiksha you can give, that is the punishment you can give, is ask him to cross his arms in front of his chest and sit quietly for 1 minute. The child will be unable to do it because it's bubbling with so much of energy. Mind is like that. So mind wants to go and it goes off. Maybe after 5 minutes, maybe after 6 minutes, suddenly a voice comes into your mind. What am I doing? I'm supposed to do meditation. And where did you go? Or where did the mind go? Somebody asked that question. Catch hold of that person. In fact, it's not the mind that reminded you that you're in meditation. Catch hold of that person. The more you start getting these reminders, that means the less influence the mind has over you. Every one of us will feel, just try it anytime, maybe before you go to bed or in the morning, you'll observe for 5 minutes, mind is on one particular place. Maybe you're doing japa, maybe you're doing meditation on one deity, but the mind goes off. And after some time, hey, what is it that you're doing? Something like that. I was sitting for meditation. I'm at the meditation seat, but the mind has gone out. So the one who reminds you, catch hold of that person. And that is the one which is to be befriended. I'm sure that all of us will be able to do it. Because here you don't require any, gadgets. Of course, we are using this laptop and things like that. But to go within, you don't require any gadgets. Close all these gadgets and try to sit and experience. Let the mind take you anywhere it wants to, but you will come back. Just as Buddha told, that the mud will settle down and you'll be able to see the clear water.
Thank you, Rakhi. Actually, we got one more question that we can take it next time. I think we will start off the next session with answering that question. The question is like, sometimes we will feel like that, okay, we achieved the goal. Then again, it depends on the situation. Again, you can see a fall. So how we can maintain? Because mostly the question is like this. Sometimes we feel like that we got it, but suddenly everything is lost when situation changes. How we can sustain? That means how we can maintain the stability. So we can discuss answering this question the next time.
We'll start with that. Start with that.
Yes.
But let me also, this question has one small thing which I wanted to reassure. Every one of us has to pass through this. And every one of us has passed through this. So there's nothing to worry about, nothing strange about it. We will be able to, we'll answer that.
Most of us frequently will be feeling the same thing. This is a question for everybody.
We'll answer that, definitely.
Okay. Thank you, Lord. Hari Om. Shubhratri.